We are stoked.
I'm a terrible sore loser. I don't follow the rules.
All the bearded guys seem to lie.
There are rumors galore.
I am so up and down on my emotions right now.
Retain salad.
Okay. Where there is smoke, there is always fire, etc., etc., etc.
You don't do it.
Been there, done that.
And we'll get into it later.
They know crap about hockey.
Come on. Well, I laugh it off.
I have no issue.
Here's the thing, though. I have nothing to do.
I'm okay with this deal.
There was no other option.
So now you have nothing.
We already blew it.
Win now, win now.
It paid off.
I will eat my pants.
Hey guys, it's Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pawel the Cat Sigmund, your smartest co-host, and I've got my not so knowledgeable co-host.
Reverend Ev, back at you, Evan Reynolds, with another week of no knowledge hockey.
Nothing.
I'm stoked, man. Another show. This is our episode 31, season 3. Looks like we're going to be running about 41 episodes this season. And this is, dude, getting to the nitty gritty. I'm looking behind you. Nitty gritty is coming down to.
Exactly. Probably one of the best mascots in any sports history. I do got to say that I feel that we have to really focus on what the presidents say and get Gary Batman on the show because he represents what we all love. Truth and vengeance. No, but I'm just kidding. It was a fun story. I don't know if you guys heard, but that the Tampa Bay Lightning were at the White House and, you know, President Joe Biden was presenting the award. And I believe in the background there was Victor Hedman, and he had a little chuckle when President Joe Biden was pronouncing Gary Bettman, and he didn't know how to pronounce it. So he said Batman. Maybe he had just seen the movie, but it's crazy. It's silly, you know, and sometimes when you're a little older, you may get forgetful like you, Evan, as you know. And what was it that you were telling me before the show that you thought I knew nothing about hockey? Well, clearly he knows even more.
Less about hockey than my pal, Pawel the Cat. By the way, if you want to follow Pawel the Cat, you can follow him on Instagram at Color Avenue. He'll tell you everything about cats. And I don't mean Felix the Cat Potvin. I'm talking about real cats.
Oh, man, it's been great. So welcome to the show. Thank you. Remember to like, share, subscribe, comment on our things. We're connected again with ASAP Network for all your sports needs, whether it's football, baseball, basketball. In the midst of the playoffs, those Raptors are really giving the 76ers a fight for their lives, so it should be exciting.
Basketball, boo.
Oh, come on. You have to love the game. I got to do something until the real playoffs starts. Well, we got a jam-packed show for you tonight. What are we going to start with, Evan? Take it away.
Well, first of all, man, let's raise our drink. If you got a drink tonight, grab your bevy, grab your snacks, and let's start our show. Hey, before we start, I got some big news. We just confirmed. We've been working on this for months in advance. During the COVID break, we thought we might be able to get this person on. We have a guest coming in. For all of you that follow hockey, you probably have heard of her, Leah Hextall. She is a Canadian sports journalist, ice hockey play-by-play broadcaster. She was the first woman to call play-by-play for NHL games as a part of the Sportsnet's first all-female broadcast team. She previously made history as the first woman to call NCAA men's ice hockey for championship game for ESPN in the 2019 tournament. She's called for the Brandon Wheat Kings of the Western Hockey League. Folks, it goes on, and she has encouraged to move into there by the legendary NHL broadcaster Mike Doc Emmerich to be the first female color commentary on Hockey Night in Canada, even with Cassie Campbell behind her. So we are excited to end our season post-playoffs before we have our last couple shows. So once the playoffs are over, she's told us she is going to join us on one of our last podcasts. So, hey guys, hands up. Thank you so much. If you're following, I doubt she's following us right now. She's probably a little busy getting ready, but and calling games. But we just want to say thank you to Leah Hextall for planning. So we will make sure to announce it in advance, put it on our Facebook pages so you guys know. We're excited to have her on and to really inspire women in hockey in all realms. And maybe next, we've been looking for a woman referee. So anyone got connections? We want some women referees. Remember, I'm the one that said it, Pawel. I think women referees in the future will be better and there'll be less complaints when women start refereeing the game.
I think in general, anytime that you're not involved in hockey, nobody's going to complain. I think it's just going to be much more smoother in general. So I'm all for it. No, I think you're right. I think the women's sport, and you can talk a little bit about what's been going on in that world right now, has really taken a front page this year and really come to the forefront. And there's a lot of more decisions being made. Now, I know that the two leagues are still combating as to what they want to do, but I think it's garnered way more attention due to the Olympics as well as other things. And I think you're going to be hearing more and more, and we'll be here to report as much as we can on it. And we're hoping to see professional women's hockey, as we had with Katie Saab, who was on the show on a previous episode, come on and talk about playing. And I think it needs to be more promoted, and the NHL needs to get involved. So I think that's something that the NHL needs to decide on.
Hey, let's mention here the IIHF Championship for women's hockey. For the first time ever, Australia has a national team that will compete in the IIHF Women's World Championship. So that's exciting news. Australia, dude.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, I don't know what they say. I don't know what they say. But that's absolutely crazy. So, we got a lot of topics. I'm stoked. It's going to be a ring of ding dong dandy here. So tie up your seatbelts, guys. Loosen up the buttons. Do whatever you need to do because we got lots to cover. And we're going to fly through it now. So where do we go? Where do you want to start with your conversations? It's some things that are just... They're blowing your head right now. You got to talk.
Let's start with Vegas because there's been some hot water run in there, and it seems like nobody really knows what's going on. They're, as of tonight, still potentially may or may not be in the playoffs. We don't know. As we're on right now, they're playing tonight, as is Dallas versus Arizona, and so. If they don't make the playoffs, which they still have a chance, but it's a very slim margin, where do we go from here? Now, there's been some reporting coming out of Robin Lehner being injured, but this is a separate injury that Frank Saravelli reported earlier on in the year. I think it was around January. He talked about it, a UBI, and now it's a lower body injury. So he's clearly fighting some injuries, but because they are over the cap, they cannot do a call-up from their AHL affiliate team, which makes it difficult, which is why Robin Lehner had to dress. Now, I'm going to go out on the limb and say Logan Thompson has proven himself time and time again and has played unreal. I watched that game last night where they played the Dallas Stars and went, I think, to the 6th or 7th round of the shootout. It was insane, right? He was making saves. Dallas was playing, unreal. But it was a healthy competition, but Dallas moves up one more point, and Nashville has secured its spot. But really, Evan, what do you do when you're not treating your goalies right? When they decided that Robin Lehner is their goalie a few years ago that we reported on for a 5-by-5-year contract and traded away Marc-Andre Fleury, the Flower, one of the nicest guys who found out over Twitter. And now he's in Minnesota and they have a good tandem there with Talbot. What does Vegas do? Do they make the playoffs? Do they do anything rash next year? Is Pete DeBoer on the hot seat? Is Kelly McCrimmon on the hot seat? What's going to happen there?
So it's interesting how, for years we've seen on how there's certain teams around the league that everyone just wants to lose. And it's interesting because a lot of people right now are hoping for the Vegas Golden Knights to lose, right? This is what I think has happened. They won coming in really early. Whether the misfits, whatever you want to call them, they were winning early. But if we think back to any team that wins a lot or seems to get all the better players, people hate them. Why do people hate the Oilers? It's not because they're the Edmonton Oilers or the Edmonton Whiners, as they used to call them, or some still call them. The truth is the issue with the Oilers is they won a lot. They have Hall of Fame players. They broke tons of records. And if you look at Tampa, Tampa's been winning the last 2 years. They beat the Flames back in '05 as well, right? And for our expansion team, if you look at Toronto, when they're winning the regular season, at least, maybe not the playoffs, but when they're winning the regular, it's like everyone wants to pick on them. They got good goal scorer in Austin Matthews. They pick on them. When Boston's winning a whole bunch, it's like, we want Boston to lose. And I think everyone's sick and tired. They're fatigued of hearing about the Golden Knights and how they always get the special favor, and they just want them to lose. But you've brought up a good question. Now, I want to hear from you, Pawel, because you've talked about who wants to sign there. Will they trust them the way they've treated players like Fleury? Now, there's other players we could go on in a little more detail in another show. We don't have the time. But, I mean, everything's a mess. I think next year they're going to find a way to deal with it in the offseason. But I still predicted they knew this season was going to be a mess anyway. I feel like long as they felt they made a push for their fans and the fans felt they were pushing, they were willing to miss the playoffs this year to settle in on some superstar big name players like the Petrangelos and the Jack Eichels and so forth.
Mark Stones.
Yeah. So what do you think they're going to do? How are they going to get back in? I mean, I think we're going to both agree they're done, right? We really think they're done. I thought they were going to win more. But when Leonard went down and he wasn't playing that great, obviously he was nursing an injury already.
When he said he's going to take season-ending surgery, and Pete DeBoer said no. So there's that. We talked about this a few months ago.
Sounds like Jack Eichel all over again.
And Nico Koskinen and how that dichotomy between coach and goaltender, and you can't pick names and attack certain players because it's not a good idea. And nobody's really looking at that. And look at where the Edmonton Oilers are now. And I don't want to take away from Vegas, but what I'm saying, that dynamic, even I think back in the day when I think it was Mike Babcock had some issues in Toronto with him playing veterans or not playing Marner and Matthews enough in the playoffs, or benching Jason Spezza, in the first game of the season. I mean, all these little things, you think about it, you need a good relationship and rapport with your team. And I don't think Pete DeBoer is that coach to take him to the promised land. And if you look at what Gerard Gallant has been able to do with the New York Rangers, granted they have unreal goaltending, which is still my Vezina and Hart winner in my heart if I was a hockey writer. I'm not a writer. I'm just hockey. But at the end of the day, I think there's going to be some middle and upper management changes. Okay. I don't know if George McPhee is gone. I mean, he did build this team. He was giving it to Kelly McCrimmon. There'll be a few small personnel changes because even if they want to, everyone gets healthy, they're still over the cap. And even though the cap goes up $1 million next year, you can't put that entire team on the ice next year. So they're going to have to get rid of some contracts. And remember, Eichel was $10 million for another 4 years after this.
Don't forget, they're pretty much out of picks. Like they've given up all their top picks. Away. So this is what I'd like to say, though. If we go back to McCrimmon, Kelly McCrimmon, when he ran the Brandon Wheat Kings, I mean, he knew how to build a championship. I'm not going to count the Vegas Golden Knights out of this. I think he's going to find a way to make some changes next year. This is Eichel's going to hate to hear this if he heard us. Not that he would ever listen to us anyway. By the way, if you are Eichel, let us know right in the comments, which we know you won't.
Come on the show and defend yourself.
But I actually think they're going to let some players go and pick up some new draft picks. And next year, they are going to be competitive, but they might be more like a Canucks team was this year, like a Vancouver Canucks team or, a team like Columbus Blue Jackets. And they might take a year to retool a little bit, which might mean Eichel's going to be out another year here before he's going to get a chance. So, but hey, it is what it is, man.
It's tough. I mean, look at the success that the Buffalo Sabres have had. They've won 5 of their last 6. I mean, they're on a roll. I mean, I know they're still under 500 hockey, but their division is pretty one-sided there. Yeah, I mean, really, you want to see what a healthy team looks like, but you also got to get more secondary scoring. And Alex Tuch was that, and I think they're missing that, and I think he was a good, perfect second-line center just behind Stevenson. But at the end of the day, and we had Jake Edenbaum on the show a while back. He was a big fan. Maybe we can get him back and he can share a little bit about what he's seen with the Vegas Golden Knights. But really, that team needs to just maybe take a breather. I mean, look what happened to Tampa in 2018. They lost the Columbus Blue Jackets. They didn't do much changes, and then they came back. You look at Toronto last year, and they got swept. Well, swept as they got owned by the Montreal Canadiens in a 7-game series. And this year they've come back stronger than ever. And, as you were going to allude to, Matthews has 60 goals on this season, which is incredible. And you're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit. But, you have to build resiliency, and you have to build that knowledge of sometimes you have to lose in order to win. You have to gain that valuable experience that not every team can get. And until you get to that spot, and Vegas has really never been in a position where they've not been in the playoffs. So you should count yourself lucky as a franchise. But I will say one thing, all Vegas fans who are harping on Seattle fans, well, neither of you have a cup. So don't go boasting that you're better than the Seattle Kraken, because I've seen that on Twitter, and I think it's a little silly, but go ahead.
Yeah, tweet away. Go on his Instagram at Color Avenue and let him know what you think. Let's get some hockey news on his cat channel. You can follow me at Revanev on Twitter. You can follow us guys on Facebook. Like, follow, share, subscribe to us on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on the ASAP All Sports All Play Network. But anyway, hey, let me mention, you just mentioned it, buddy.
I do want to say we do have a new boss, though, at Twitter, though, now. Well, you do.
Yes, we do. Which means I can say more things that I want without anybody kicking me off. Which also means more people can say more things to me without being kicked off.
So more cat pictures.
So can I just say something to all you guys on social media? I do think some of you guys, it's probably not you guys, because if you're listening to our show, maybe you got a head on your shoulders. But let's face it, you don't like what someone's saying, block them, dude. Just block them. If they get offended, oh well. If they don't like it, have fun. All we ask for, if you're communicating in our social media, you can say whatever you want. We won't block you. We'll let you say stuff. Just don't come against people's character. That's all we just say, right? You can tell we know nothing, and you can say we know nothing, but just don't come against people's character, or guess what we'll do? We'll block you. So anyway,
I love telling Evan he knows nothing about hockey and telling him he's wrong. So I'm with you there, Twitter.
That's coming from a guy that only knows about cats. So everyone thought your handle had something to do with about your reflex, and I was like, no, it's just because he likes cats. So Matthews, I wanted to share this last week at the end of the week, just right after our show. So when Matthews was sitting at 58 goals. There's a lot of talk about, we talked about this, we're not going to spend much time right now, the Hart Trophy, who's going to win this thing. A lot of people think, it's funny, wherever you are, it's kind of biased. If you're in the New York region, you think Sherstinkin. How do we say his name again? Sherstinkin? Sherstinkin. I know I'm bugging you. Okay, so if you're in the New York area, you're saying, hey, he should win it. If you're following down in the southern states, a lot of people are saying Huberdeau. If you're following in the southern Alberta, you're saying that's Goudreau. If you're in the region here in Edmonton, in the northern part of Alberta, it's McDavid. If you're in the whole eastern part of the world of Canada, you're saying Matthews. Now, I want to share something about this stat. So over 70% of zone starts for Matthews are in the offensive zone. So people saying he's so defensive, you need to look at the stats. The other thing to say about Matthew, and by the way, to me, he's the greatest goal scorer in the history now of the Maple Leafs. And right now, he's the best goal scorer in the NHL. Yes. I give that to him. Yes. And I do think he should be up for the running. But let me just say this. When he was at 58 goals, he has 14 power play goals. And his other 30 goals are against non-playoff teams. 28 of 58 are actually against playoff teams. So he's 60% are all against non-playoff teams he's scoring goals on. So I want you guys to notice that. And when he scores in clumps against non-playoff teams. Let me tell you another player who's a project that's coming in, going to be coming into Edmonton. That's the one fear is Carter Savoy. is because Carter Savoy played against the weaker teams, scored a lot of his goals against them. So please watch that. When you see guys like Stamkos and Ovechkin, they're scoring those same goals on the good playoff teams, the solid contenders. That's a big deal how that player performs. So just realize that when you're going on that he's all Hart trophy. I actually think that it's going to be between Matthews and McDavid. I'm not sure who's going to win. We'll see in the last couple games that they got left. But if you're a Toronto fan, guys, I'm not hating on you, man. You got right now, I'm telling you, I think he's the number 2 player in the league, but he don't deserve the Hart, man. He don't deserve the Hart.
Oh man, Evan, you're just starting a Twitter war again.
Can I say something? Can I say
Go
something? Ahead. I'm gonna change who I'm voting for the Hart. If I had a vote, I'm actually going for Huberdeau this year. The fact he is so close to McDavid in points. I know he's playing for a better team, but we got to quit holding that against other players. The fact of what that team has done and changed around, and he's a left wing. He's not a centerman. He's a left wing scoring that.
But like you gave the argument for Matthews, he plays against non-playoff teams like Buffalo, Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
You know, like what's the difference between Matthews and Huberdeau?
Well, I haven't checked out Huberdeau's stats.
Oh, okay. He's got quite a few assists. He's been there.
Yeah.
Again, I still stick with Shesterkin. He is my number 1. You know, Goudreau has really gotten up in my voting.
So you're giving
the
your
last little bit that I said because of his even strength points. And if you think about hockey and the best way that it's played, it's 5-on-5.
So
and he's got like.
So Shesterkin's getting your podcast vote, right?
Exactly. He's getting my podcast vote. And I'm sorry, but that team, it's the most valuable to your team. If he is gone, if that player is removed from the equation, what is your team? Right? And so for me, Toronto is already stacked because they've won a lot without Matthews due to injury or conditioning or whatever the situation may have been. And they're even better with him in the lineup, but they've been able to win without him because they have so much offensive firepower. But in my mind, teams like Oilers without McDavid, you have Draisaitl, but can he hold the load for a full 82-game season? Right? Do you have that depth scoring? You know, Evander Kane has come in and made him.
And it's interesting. It's interesting because you were talking. I know we're cutting each other off, but we're talking about the Hart, and we said we're not talking about the Hart. But it's interesting because McDavid's top players he plays with are not even Evander Kane lately. That's been helping him, but some of his top times is with Hyman, Puyarvi, Kyler Yamamoto, and Evander Kane. That's the top 4 players that he spent more time with, and none of those players people are going to say are in the top 25 in the league. So if you're going by who plays with who, that's a big deal. I just think, though, that's a bad argument, and I think McDavid's got ripped off in the past because he played with Draisaitl. Now he's without Draisaitl, still doing the same thing. I think he's proven time and time. I mean, to me, McDavid is the best player in the league, but I don't know if he's the most valuable to his team, which is the reward for the Hart.
And I think he's going to most likely win the Ted Lindsay Award, but that's just my prediction. Now, you did bring out Huberdeau, and I did want to talk about one player, and I featured him in the back here. So Claude Giroux, when he got traded, you know, people look at kind of acquisitions to see, you know, was it a good acquisition? Was it a good trade? Who did it benefit? Was it equal? Did one side win better? So currently, in the last little bit, Claude Giroux has scored 3 goals and has 20 assists or 17 assists in the last little bit with the Florida Panthers. You know, he's playing on that top power play unit, which is deadly because you got Huberdeau, you got Barkov.
So 23 points. Giroux has 20, because that's one of my things I was going to talk about. 23 points in 18 games.
Yeah.
He is playing the best hockey of his life statistically.
And he is keeping the Philadelphia tradition alive where he is in the playoffs this year. Like I thought I predicted that they would have done, which normally it's 1 year off, 1 year on.
Hey, let me throw another stat. The team, since acquiring him, have played 18 games. They're 16-2 with him in the lineup.
Yep. I still question their back end without Ekblad. And what does that look like? Because he is going to be a big piece going into the series. Now, they may face, and we're going to get into the series soon, and we're going to have some discussions about who plays how and who's going to emerge. But it looks like they're either going to face Washington or Boston, which is, I don't know if it's going to work either way for them. Maybe our former guest, Mike Smith, can give us some insight into that if they face Boston. But really, Florida has a lot to prove. And, I wonder if Bill Zito will look at this year, if they get out of the first round, if he needs to change anything, if this was a great season success but not playoffs, or if they're looking for more, they're going to change more personnel.
Yeah. No. Granted. Granted.
And well, I know a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I wanted to come back. If you got something, you go ahead and finish it because I want to come back to Toronto.
Oh, no, essentially that was it. I did hear through the grapevine that UC Saros may not start for Nashville. And he may be out for a few games, if not the first series.
So that's going to be a sweep, man. If he's not in, that's a sweep, eh?
And it looks like they could either face Calgary or Colorado. It's one of the two, depending on where Dallas ends up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially if they don't win out, right? So wow. Okay, well, let's give our head a shake. I want to take a little bit of time. We both, when I say give our head a shake, at this next discussion, I want to talk about Rookie of the Year candidates. There's a few players out there, but I want to focus this around bunting. This is my issue. Now, I'm going to do a comparison, and then I'm going to throw it back to you, Pawel. But I'm going to do a comparison between someone that, to me, should not be running for Rookie of the Year, but someone who is ineligible. Now, let's look at bunting, rookie, Bouchard. Evan Bouchard is a rookie in Edmonton.
Yes.
Bouchard is not eligible. Bunting is. Bunting has played 26 NHL games. He's 26 years old. He's eligible. Evan Bouchard he's 22 years old. He's 4 years younger, and he's played 5 less games. He's only played 21. But because his 21 games has been split over the first 2 years with so many games, I think it was 6 or so amount games in his first year, so that he was sent back, he's ineligible to play. Now, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I'll just give you the stats. So in Arizona, he played in 2018, 2019, 5 games with 1 goal and no assists. And in 2021, so 2 years later, because he went back to the Tuscan Roadrunners in the AHL, he played 21 games, 10 goals, 3 assists. So that's a total before this year in Toronto of 26 games.
Yeah, that's what I had. Yep, that's accurate. Okay, so now I want to show people the insanity of this. 4 years younger. He's got, remember this, he's got 21 games. He's played 5 less games, and he's 4 years younger. But the way they make the eligibility. Now, previously, the other year here, there was a complaint about Kaprizov from a lot of Maple Leafs fans about his eligibility. But it's funny that those same naysayers are not complaining about Bunting now being open and has a chance to win Rookie of the Year. And I want you to look at something. This is what's interesting about Bouchard. Not trying to make a case, because I think Cedar is he's gonna walk away with this. I'm positive.
It's more cider, man. Come on, get with the pronunciations.
He is a tree.
What is he?
He's a tree back there. He's a cedar tree. Okay. All right. So listen to this. All-time even strength points by a rookie defenseman. He is a rookie defenseman, Bouchard, just not eligible for the Rookie of the Year. 40 points is the maximum all-time even strength points by a rookie. Bouchard is at 35 with a couple games left to play. He is sitting number 5 in total numbers. That is insane. Insane, and he has no eligibility to even have a shot this year. The NHL needs to give their head a shake and look into this, because this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that you alluded to is that there was so much huff and puff about Kirill Kaprizov, the real deal last year, about him being 24. And, even though it was his first year in the league, and should he be nominated for the rookie? Well, what is the definition of the rookie? It's your first year in the NHL playing pro. You're playing with men. Now, I do give credence and a little bit of leeway to players like Moritz Seider, like Lucas Raymond, like Trevor Zegras, who are in their first year, but they're only maybe 18, 19 years old, because to be at that level of skill, to put up points with your team, and maybe your team isn't as good, maybe like a Jack Hughes in New Jersey, and you're still putting up points, you're still playing top minutes against the most elite centers, defenders, things like that, and you're still making an impact, that is a big deal. Now, when you're 24, as you know, Evan, and a lot of hockey fans know, you're a bit more built, you're a bit more skilled, you've had time, you've seasoned a bit, so you're ready for the big leagues. It's not to take away from what Michael Bunting has done, say that 5 times fast, but it just shows you the importance of waiting out a little bit and, switching your careers back and forth. And sometimes it's an easy transition. And sometimes, as you know, some GMs prefer that their rookies season and marinate in, I'm getting hungry now. They take a little time to develop in the juniors and in the AHL and then transition over. And some do it smoothly. And it's hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of players that don't have that opportunity and come in later to the league and make an impact. Now, the one name that I think people need to realize is Matthew Boldy out in Minnesota, because he's also a rookie and having an excellent season. And like the Hart, I think there's a lot of rookies this year that have made an impact and could be nominated for the, for the award. So,
for the whatchamacallit award.
For the Calder. I can't even think about it.
Guys, he knows absolutely nothing about hockey.
Zero.
But you need to listen to what he has to say.
Brain fart. Cow dung in my head.
There's a hockey puck in your head. The original hockey puck.
Exactly. The other one, which is not normally seen, is goaltenders who are rookie winners. And if you take a look at Jeremy Swayman out in Boston, he is having an incredible season as a backup. Now, in the last few weeks, Linus Ullmark, however you want me to pronounce it, Evan, you tell me, you're the expert here. He's had the better season. The last 6 weeks, he's had the better numbers. But it looks like Swayman may start in the playoffs and be their starting goaltender, just how good he is. I mean, Boston has had a plethora, we've talked about this before, of goaltenders. So in my mind, my 3 picks for the, for the Calder nominee, and for the what's it called, it is Michael Bunting. Yes, 100%. Yeah. He does deserve to be nominated. It is Moritz Seider or Cedar, the cedar wood as Evan calls him. And Matthew Boldy. Those are my 3. With an honorable mention.
You take Matthew Boldy, eh? Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, obviously, so you wouldn't put Lucas Raymond in there, though.
So I would, but because it's 2 Detroit players, I think Seider's having the better season out of the 2.
One will always cancel the other.
Yeah, and I think he's got quite a few assists, if I recall. He's only got a few goals, but he's got in 81 games, 6 goals and 43 points. Yeah. 43 assists. So there you go. So 49 points.
It makes sense, everything that you're saying, which is, I apologize to all of our hockey fans here actually saying that Pawel the Cat actually makes sense, but you know what? Sometimes it is what it is. Hey, let's move on. We got a whole bunch of things we wanted to talk about. Let me just throw in non-NHL related, because we got a few more NHL things to talk about. I just want to mention that the CHL has officially come out, and there is sanctions now against the Russians and the Belarusians. They are not eligible for this year's Canadian Hockey League import draft that is on July 1st. I want to say that this is hogwash. Putin never wanted to have Russian players, specifically Russian players, to play in North America. They've wanted to keep their own junior players for a long time. So the only person that this is punishing is those players. Now, what I will say is that the sanctions are not against current people who have already are playing for those teams currently. Yeah. This is only for the import draft. But I just feel like they're stretching. For example, who is it? If you guys go follow Ken Campbell on Twitter, Look him up at Ken Campbell. He has some articles on this. He brought up an interesting point. Now, I'm not saying yes or no, but how come the Americans, when they were invading Iraq, they didn't say no to the import draft for Americans? Yeah, that's one of the things that he brings up. Now, some people are like, well, that's a whole different ballgame. The point is, sanctioning against 16 and 17-year-olds, and I saw some people on Twitter going off, and I know Twitter is going to even get worse over the next while, but I see some people going off on Twitter kind of saying, yeah, well, how do you know those Russian kids don't want to go and invade? It's like, oh, come on, get off of your pot. It's just like, what kind of pot are you on? You got a few hockey pucks stuck in that pot, I think, or maybe too many you've taken to the head. And you're actually not understanding. These young players' careers are on the line because of a stupid country, right?
I think you've been spending too much time with Aaron Singleton from the show about hockey podcasts, mixing with political fairy dust of like what you think is happening. You know what? It's been done. It's out of the realm of control of what happens. Just the way COVID and the medical world responded to COVID and how hockey had to respond to those narratives. We're not ever going to get a clear picture of how that's going to impact drafting, how it's going to impact development teams, who selects where and whatnot. I only hope that these kids who really, at the end of the day, regardless of their own personal views, I mean, they're kids, right? So they haven't made up their mind and they're still young and impressionable. Their focus is hockey and making it to the big leagues. That's all it is. Whatever league that includes. I mean, ideally the NHL, but maybe KHL for them or AHL or somewhere in Europe. They want to play in Sweden or Finland. And so at the end of the day, you know, you want to make sure that they succeed and have the best opportunity possible. If this is going to hinder it, they're going to look for alternative ways. And sometimes we won't be exposed to great players until later on in the future to think, wow, how did they drop so far in the draft? Or wow, why didn't we know about this kid beforehand? So that's the only thing I can really say about it. I mean, everything else, you know, you gotta find somewhat of a separation. I know that people aren't going to be happy with that response, but it's. I'm not saying politics and sports aren't intertwined. You know, you could talk about, you know, the 70s Canada versus USSR Cup and what that represented for the world, but at the same time, we live in a different world where it's a bit more globalized and it's a bit different. So I only hope things get resolved quickly. And I only hope that we can get back to seeing some real NHL players being developed. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, we're going to get ready. So next week we were just talking, and just so you guys know, we know that we haven't had any guests on for a while. We've had so much to talk about. So we're going to take a little bit of a backseat. At least this is our plan. We might change our plan because we like to hear ourselves, or at least I do.
I was about to say, I like the sound of my own voice and you behind me telling me I'm wrong. So I love it.
So next week, we're hoping to get some, we're going to have some guests on. We're not going to tell you who or anything because, of course, with our show, it's a hit and miss every day. Somebody, you know, their wife might not let them come on the show. So who knows, right? Some people might be doing politics. Other people might be down at the brewski. Who knows? So anyway, we got some guests we're going to bring on. What's that?
I got a quick comment because my dad isn't big into hockey. He's not really a sports guy, and I am. And, you know, he even recently asked me, how was the podcast? What did you talk about? What's new in the hockey world? And so I explained things to him, and it's like, you know, talking to a brick wall because he's just like, I don't know anything. And the only thing I'm like, well, Edmonton is winning. He's like, well, that's a first because all he ever knew was the decade of darkness.
Well, Flame fans are in love with you with that comment. So, yeah, we're going to bring some guys on next week. Each one of us is going to take a series. And we're not sure how many of us are going to be on, but we're going to take a series or so, and we're going to kind of walk through the games. Definitely are going to have got started, but we're going to be in the early part of the round, and we're going to do some breakdowns for you guys. So look forward to that part of it. Again, follow us on Facebook, like, follow, share, subscribe on our YouTube channel. And guys, keep commenting down below here. We appreciate it.
And please let us know your Calder nominee or winner this year, who you think is the best rookie this season, whoever it may be, whether it's on your team or someone that you just were surprised to see.
Okay, so I want to touch base. We'll see how long this part takes. See
Okay.
what we got left.
Bring it.
This was the last big topic I wanted to for sure cover today. I with playoffs coming, there's a lot to talk about with travel. So first of all, people are going to say, "Well, Evan, how do you know this information?" Well, I've heard it from different people in interviews over the years. You read the articles, you hear the interviews, whether it's your local radio stations, on television, broadcasters, you name it. But anyway, if you go on Twitter, folks, there's a retired Chris Pronger who is having a ball just enjoying Twitter and just sharing his stories. Some people are hating on him, but he don't care. He was hated on as a player. I think what was the guy, 6'6", 240 pounds? Yeah,
he was a big boy.
And he don't care what you say, but he's going to share. And it's a great read. So one of the things he talked about, and the reason I wanted to touch base on this, you're going to get to read most of it yourself. I'm just going to share a few things. Travel. He talked about travel. Now, he talks about his early days. I'm not going to go into that with you guys. But what I want you to think about is teams like Philly. So Chris Pronger shares about this. He says that he thinks Philadelphia is one of the easiest teams on travel in the entire NHL. And the reason he talks is because to go play the Rangers, for example, the New York Rangers or Washington, right? They just take a train. No, they take a train to those places.
Okay.
They take a bus to New Jersey. Okay. And then it's a short 45-minute flight to Pittsburgh, 20-minute flight to Long Island. But then he reverts back to his days with the Ducks and talks about how you get home at 2 or 3 in the morning. This is on charters even. Then you take a bus back to the Honda Center. From the Honda Center, you got to take your cars. Like, people don't have a clue why a lot of players are selecting to play in the East. It takes a lot. You got jet lag. You have all these different things. Now imagine if you are 6'6", 240-pound Chris Pronger, or maybe one of those goalies, where many of the goalies that are big, and you're stuck in the middle seat. Traditionally, rookies get middle seats, even on charters, right? Wherever they're sitting. You got these huge legs, very little space. Even on a charter, you're still limited. And I am always worried in the finals of seeing that East versus West. And that's why, if you remember back in the 80s, when the Ron Hextall Flyers took on the Edmonton Oilers, it was a 2-3-2 format. It was 2 games in the home team, 3 games. All 3 games were played in the visitors, then the last 2 in the home team. Mm-hmm. And so here's a question. Playoff format. Would you like to see a 2-3-2 to be a little bit more fair for the West? And if you are, my question is, are you an Easterner or a Westerner when you make that vote? Because that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
It is. Yeah, it definitely is an interesting one, especially depending on which 2 teams end up in the finals. So this year we could have a Tampa Bay and a Calgary in the final. Very real possibility. And the distance between those 2 cities, very far, Or if you, but you could also have a
Los Angeles.
Well, Los Angeles, possibly.
A Los Angeles, Ranger.
New York.
Yeah. Well, come on. Like, for our Ranger fans, I mean, we got hope this year. Come on, Rangers versus the Los Angeles Kings.
Well, I was gonna say maybe like in Edmonton and a Florida, right? Like, then you've got really far distance, even further down, right? So it definitely flights. I think they've talked about it, how I think the Western teams usually in the Pacific have the highest or the longest amount of distance that they do each year than those teams in the East, because they're so close, all those cities, right? Within near reach. So it definitely can have an impact for you. That being said, I think, like Kucherov kind of indicated last year, he couldn't even sleep. A lot of players probably have a hard time even sleeping throughout the night in the Stanley Cup Finals because of the intensity and the impact of the series. Just thinking about steps that you're going to take, your routine and what you have to do in order to win that next game to get to that final. So it's definitely going to be an interesting go of it.
Yeah.
Oh, you lost me there. Or I lost you there. Sorry.
Yeah,
Technical
no, it's good,
difficulties. Even my recording didn't like what I was saying. Sorry. It's trying to shut me up. All right, I'm done.
Well, hey, with mentioning about the travel, so here's a question. When I'm talking about like playoff formats, I was listening to an interview with the Hall of Famer and the second most points for defenseman in history, Paul Coffey. And he talked about in the early days, if you remember when the Oilers first made the playoffs, they went against the number one team, the Montreal Canadiens, who were coming out of their dynasty. And that's the great Guy Lafleur, Larry Robinson, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a 1-6. And I know a lot of people even have thought West and East, right? 1 versus 8 and 2 versus 7.
We've had that.
And we've had that talk. But, I mean, think of this. What if you quit having a West East so there's no fairness at all about where the East just gets to have less travel and the West still has to travel amongst each other? But you have a 1 versus 16 again, a 2 versus 15. And literally the first, second, and the top 4 spots, you're going to play a team that barely made the playoffs, and there's less chance of upsets. I kind of feel like the reason people want within conference is they're trying to build rivalry, but there is no real rivalry anyway. And so why don't you just get the best teams, best on best, like every other hockey tournament, generally speaking? I don't know. What do people think?
Yeah, you guys can comment. I'm happy with the format that it is. I don't want to. It changes every few years, anyways. So from the time I started watching hockey, it's always been something a little bit different. Even in the All-Star game, they've had it, And at the end of the day, it is what it is. If the owners agree to it and the GMs agree to it, go for it. I like that sometimes the upsets because you don't know what to expect and predict.
That's
Montreal beat out Pittsburgh last year. Chicago beat out Edmonton a few years ago in the bubble. Columbus beat out Toronto. There's few upsets, right? It has, it happens every so often, and it's unpredictable. That's what I love about playoff hockey. It's unpredictable. What I'm curious about is to see how reffing takes place. The first episode of the season that we did was talking about cross-checking, whether that's going to be in enforced. Has it been, Evan? No, it has not. Not as much as we wanted it to be.
I actually want to say that I'm noticing, this is what I've noticed actually with cross-checking. Didn't expect you to bring this up, but what I've noticed with cross-checking, and we only have a few minutes left here, but with cross-checking, what I've noticed is there is less cross-checking in front of the net.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's intentional, because it's not because they called so many penalties, but the stick behind, some refs don't call it, but other refs are still calling it.
Yeah.
But all I can say is every playoff season we come into it, and I'm like, please let the skill players play. Don't let the cross checks and the whacks and hacks and illegal stuff that would get called in the regular season not be called in the playoffs. The NBA's got it right. You let your star players be star players. Because otherwise, we're going to always have teams that it's all about grunt and grit. I want the grit, but I don't want the grunts, if you got my point. I want the skill with the grit, right? That's why, like Crosby, man, the guy might be a 5'11", but at 205, 210, he plays like a grunt with a lot of grit down in those corners, and yet he has skill. But if you keep cross-checking them and hitting them and knocking them over and you don't get called for it, well, you've just eliminated one, if not one of the best players to ever play in the NHL.
No, 100%. 100%.
That bugs me.
I have to agree with you once in a while, but
once in a while.
I'll give you this one this time. Any last thoughts before we finish up, Evan?
I just found... Maybe you can update me a bit. I didn't do my history check. Anyone else can kind of comment on this? What about Dryden McKay? You talked about him the other week.
Yes, so we did. So he just signed an entry-level deal with the Toronto Marlies. Even though he's got the 6-month probation that we talked about last week. So good for Toronto. They could use a goaltender. Will this lead to an NHL contract? It could,
what do you mean? Like their injuries, they can use a goaltender, or because their goaltenders aren't playing well?
I mean, they've had injury in the past. I see Peter Mrazek leaving this off season. Skalgren that we talked about, he's played pretty well given everything. You know, what he was a fourth goalie in line, you know, like an ascension to where they were going to go. You know, Jack Campbell is to his true form. He's been playing very well, which is funny because both Edmonton and Toronto, there was a lot of talks with their GMs around trade deadline 6 weeks ago about goaltending and not replacing it and how bad it is. And now Jack Campbell and Mike Smith have been playing very well. Will that translate and transition to the playoffs? Remains to be seen. But they've had a great April and a bit of March, right? So it's definitely interesting. But Dryden did sign. So congrats to the kid, because that's a great opportunity for him. And I hope to see him in a Marlies uniform because they're doing well. I do also want to give a shout out to the Oil Kings, who are playing very well right now against the Lethbridge Hurricanes.
Hockey League.
Pretty good.
League, the CHL.
It's been pretty exciting stuff. You know, I think they're up 3-0 on the series, so that's been pretty good. And
okay, so hey, you had asked me a question. What was kind of my last thought of it? And I just want to put out best wishes for a quick recovery to Trip Tracy, broadcaster for the Carolina Hurricanes. He has stepped down from calling games for them right now, and as they're getting going to the playoffs, just to address personal matters. You know, there's a lot of speculation of what it is, just like Carey Price and many others before him. I would tell you, you know what, let's honor that. Right now, Tripp has gone on social media and apologized for needing to take the time. It's like, you know, I know Tripp doesn't listen to us, but I'm just going to say, man, he's a great guy, and there's no need to apologize for taking care of your own health and making sure your family's doing well. So, hey, we want to wish him a quick recovery, and, you know, pray all is going well with him and his family.
100%. And we want to know who you think could potentially be the Stanley Cup winner this year, because there's some exciting series that are coming up. I'm looking forward to our show next week. I also want to say, Evan, like in the last 31 episodes that we've done, and it's been a hell of a season. There's been so many up and down stories, roller coaster of emotions, of things happening, highs and lows for a lot of teams. But we finally got here, and I'm excited for our playoff edition that we do. We hope you guys tune in and check us out, whether on Twitter, Evan on Revenev, you know, his Twitter handle. And I'm just looking forward to hanging out with my co-host and telling him he needs a playoff beard like this to be ready, because I think this is going to have to go in the summer, as much as dismay to you and my wife.
Well, maybe now that the restrictions have lifted, we might be able to do a recording at some point during this, before the season ends, recording together live. We've never done, just so you guys know, we've never done. This started at the beginning of the pandemic, so we've always kept our shows like this. So who knows, we might look totally stupid if we do a live show together in the same location.
I've personally avoided being in the same room as Evan, so...
Maybe, you know, we might break out in a hockey fight. Who knows?
Oh, heck yeah.
Well, guys.
Well, we don't have any history between us, so you know, this will be a fun brawl.
Oh, by the way, I just want to mention one of the reasons I think that the Tampa Bay Lightning continue to actually do very well is by bringing in inexpensive, and we didn't mention this last week, but Brian Elliott was signed to another 1 year, $900,000 extension. He's been an excellent backup, man. You know, those are the things that are going to make winning teams. So we'll see how well they do. But again, I'm not going to change my vote. Guys, I think that the Tampa Bay Lightning will be your three-time Stanley Cup champions and become the dynasty of the future.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, man.
I should take a bet. I'm still waiting on that money from that Carolina-Pittsburgh bet, where Carolina's not big and tough enough. But okay, we'll see how things go.
Well, looking right now at how we might have to renegotiate something, because your goalies are going down like nothing over in Carolina. They've not been doing well the end of the season. But I don't know if Tristan Jarry's coming back, so that might kill everything. So maybe you have to recalculate our bet and get back at it. But yeah, I think both those teams could be out early. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys. On behalf of Two Guys in Hockey Talk, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe, everyone.
Oh, by the way, head your head up.